more about what was going on. You know, you kind of work in an area and you get new theories or new ideas or perspectives coming out, and it got to a point where, well, what was it? What was that thing? What am I missing that actually is making something work for somebody and not work for somebody else? So that was where really my my journey started into delving into perception, because perception kind of covers everything. It influences our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors. So what I've done is I've tried to, I normally give this as a day's lecture. So I've tried to squeeze it down into 40 minutes, and I say 40 minutes. It will probably be a bit longer if we have any questions and things, but it's kind of, should take you on a journey of what perception is, and what it isn't, and some useful tools about how we can use that information. Okay, so we shall begin. Okay, I'm hoping you can all see that. So, perils of perception. So, quick overview of the brain. So, about 2.5 million years ago, we had, as a species, kind of a huge exponential growth of brain size. There are a few theories about why this happened. An interesting one on memetics, about the back part of our brain copying itself onto the front part of our brain to produce our neocortex. But so our brain kind of grew exponentially. It wasn't the largest brain. The Homo neanderthalensis had a larger brain to us, but the structure was different, which will be interesting. So keep a note of that. So evolution kind of doesn't tend to throw things away, so we kind of grow on top of each other. So we have a reptilian brain, the basic survival instincts. If you're hungry, you look for water. If you're thirsty, you look for food. And then grew on top of that, grew our paleo-mammalian brain, and this is where our social instincts started to emerge. And then on top of that, grew our neo-mammalian brain. So all mammals will have this structure. And what's interesting is that you'll see, I'm hoping you can see my cursor on the screen as well. So there's a part here which is missing, and this is your prefrontal cortex, or your neocortex, your new brain. And to a greater or lesser extent, this has begin growing in mammals. And in humans, it grew much bigger. So you'll also know you've got a split brain. So you have a left side and a right side. So your left brain controls the right side of your body, the right brain controls the left side. And one side will be more kind of verbal logic, one side will be more emotional. It tends to be, on general, that people who are right-handed are more left-brained, and with left-handers, it kind of switches around. So I thought to begin with, we'd have a little test to see which one of your brain sides are more dominant. And this is called the Stroop test. So the next screen, what you'll see is a series of words going down in a list. So what I want you to do out loud is to say what the word is saying as fast as you can. Okay, so read the words and say out loud as we go down as fast as you can. Ready? Go. Okay, cool. So that should have been pretty quick for most people. Now what I want you to do is do the same exercise, this time say out loud what color the word is written in. So what color the word is written in, not what the word says. Okay, so as fast as you can, go. Okay, is that a little bit trickier? Okay. So for most people, especially right-handers, that kind of think with the verbal logic, reading, writing, if that side is more dominant, then you will automatically want to read the words, and you'll read them almost before you get to them. But when you try then to use your other side of your brain, which is less dominant, you start to get into difficulty. So there's a conflict between the two sides. So you have in the middle of your brain the corpus callosum, which shares information back and forth, and it's a tight bundle of nerves. And if one side is being more dominant, it will try and get information across to actually say, okay, well that color is purple, yellow, red, green. But the dominant side will keep wanting to read that words, and so you'll have kind of an error messages coming back and forth all the time. So you should now know which side is slightly more dominant for you, which is interesting. So make a note if you have a pen and paper. So what was interesting about the left and right hemisphere is that in the 60s, Joseph Bogan and Philip Vogel, also known as the West Coast Bushers, they are neuroscientists, and they started to do corpus callosectomies. So they actually cut the corpus callosum for people that were kind of suffering from kind of severe epileptic fits. Nothing else they could be done. So they performed this technique where they cut the corpus callosum, so severing the two sides of the brain. This was successful, pretty much. Seizure rates kind of fell off completely, almost. But what started happening was the information between the left side and the right side of the brain wasn't being shared. So you had the start of two hemispheres that had two different personalities. So we started getting reports of one hand kind of lighting up a cigarette and the other hand putting it out because it didn't smoke. So you had two different personalities, almost two different consciousnesses in one brain. So this started being looked at by Roger Sperry, among others. And they started doing experiments. And one of the experiments was the key ring experiment. So they would have people who'd gone through this procedure staring at a screen, looking at the cross in between the two words with no words there, just staring at the cross, and then in 1/10 of a second, the words key ring would flash up, just enough for it to register. They then asked them to look into a bag. So with their right hand, go into a bag and pull out the object that they saw displayed on the screen. So with their right hand, they would pull out a key. Okay, great. And then they were asked for their left hand to do the same, and their left hand would go in and pull out a ring. And they couldn't understand why they pulled out a ring. So I saw a key. So one side saw a key and registered the key. One side saw a ring and registered a ring. And so there was no communication going back and forth. And so their worlds were almost split in half completely. So I find this interesting because it's the start of looking at consciousness and where consciousness comes from. Is consciousness a whole thing, or do you have two consciousnesses, two personalities in your brain? If you ever start finding yourself talking to yourself, is one hemisphere actually talking to the other? Interesting question. I'd love to do research on it. So, perception versus reality. So what I'm going to show you now is kind of tear down your understanding of perception and what it actually is. So most people would have seen this before. It's a chessboard, checkerboard, white, grey, white, grey, white, grey, green cylinder. So tile A and tile B are marked. Now, in the chat, if you want to, if you can, what can you tell me about tile A and tile B? Which one is darker, which one is lighter? I'm hoping you would say that tile A appears darker. Okay, yeah. So, according to this, your vision, tile A, should appear darker than tile B. Well, in fact, they are exactly the same shade of gray. Now, with this kind of, for those of you who've seen this before, you think, well, okay, yeah, it looks kind of gray, and you know, it's difficult to see. And if I go back, it kind of almost automatically switches back to A and B. It's not my computer, honestly. It's not changing the tile B to the same shade of gray. This is what it is. And to prove this to you, I've got another one. So here we have another tile. We have a kind of gray tile on top of a white tile. So to prove it's not my computer doing this, what I want you to do is take your finger and cover the join in between the two tiles. What happens to the tile underneath? Yeah, changes to a gray, same shade of gray as the top. You can take your finger away, it appears white again. Yeah, you can do it as many times as you like. It's the same shade, it's the same gray. So what your brain is doing is interpreting input data into the best format it thinks. And so it looks at this image and says, okay, well, I think I know what this should be, so therefore I'm going to make you see what I think it should be, not what's actually there. So it also does that with color too. So, can you see my cursor? Yeah, okay. So on the left, so this tile here, so I'm hoping you'll see that as blue. Yeah, we've got a blue tile, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 blue tiles. Cool, we know what blue looks like. And on the other side, we have this tile, which should look like yellow. And under here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yellow tiles. Yep. Blue tile, yellow tile. Cool. And so if you can see me, I've got a printout copy of it here too. So we've got blue tiles and yellow tiles. Well, disappointing again, those tiles are actually the same color, and that color is gray. Well, what I've got here, I'm going to fold it over and show you that these are actually just gray tiles. So they appear blue here and they appear yellow there, but they are actually 4 gray tiles and 7 gray tiles. They just appear to you to be blue and yellow. Now think about that for a second. You've got 4 blue tiles and 7 yellow tiles. So you know the difference between blue and yellow. That's quite a distinct difference. So look around. What can you see around you that are blue and yellow? If you see anything, are they really blue and yellow? Well, you don't know, because it could be gray, like these tiles are. Your brain won't actually tell you what you see. It will only tell you what it thinks should be there. And so it's looking at this side with the yellow light shining on it, and it's thinking, okay, this is a cube, lots of colors on it. I think it should be blue. So I'm going to make you see blue. And it looks at the other side and says, okay, this is like a cube with blue light shining on it. So these tiles should look like they're yellow. The fact that they're not blue and yellow makes no difference whatsoever. Your brain thinks you should see yellow, so you see yellow. Interesting. It's actually, this was discovered more when they were looking at bees, bee vision. and how B's vision corresponds mostly to the context in which it sees it. So human vision is between 400 and 700 frequency wavelengths, but the bees can't really see red, so theirs is shifted down to UV. So they see a different picture of the world than we do, but it's still based on context. So what they see is based on fitness for them. So they can see kind of nectar and the ultraviolet reflection from plants more, because that's what they need to see. So we see what's fit for us, and the bees see what's fit for them. Okay. So we have our kind of main focus of vision. We also have peripheral vision. So here's a little test for you. So if you hold your hands out as wide as you can to the sides and slowly bring them in until you can see the ends of your hands. Okay, so you can kind of see that vision. Cool. Now do the same top and bottom. So you can bring them into the top and the bottom until you see your hands. Okay, so I can see my bottom down here and I can see my top up here. So in theory, you should see kind of the whole field in front of you. So, I can see a door and I can see a window and I can see the table. Well, you can't. What you can see in detail is the size of your thumbnail, it's arm's length. So if you put your thumbnail out, arm's length, that's about the size of what you can see in any detail. The rest is made up from sketchy bits of information from your eye, and the rest then is built up from what your brain remembers was there and what it thinks should be there. So you don't actually see it. I know that sounds weird, but I'm going to prove it to you. So what I'm going to show you now is something called the flicker paradigm. So what you'll see is an image flicker and then go away, and then a second image flicker and go away, and it will keep on doing that. So it'll be picture A, picture B, picture A, picture B, and there'll be a difference between the two pictures. So it's like spotting the difference, picture A, picture B. So your job is to spot the difference between the two pictures, picture A and picture B.
I think you need to split your screen. You're not sharing your screen at the moment.
Can you see my screen?
No.
It's just going to come up now with the video.
You were sharing it earlier. It's just sorry to interrupt you.
Can anyone else see my screen? Hands up if you can't see it.
I can see the screen, I just can't see the movie.
Okay, yeah. No,
you see the word dinner.
Yeah, give it a second, it will come up now. It's a bit slow.
When you said in the chat, I can see dinner, I thought, okay.
Okay, here we go. Can you see that? Picture A, picture B, picture A, picture B, picture A, picture B. Can you spot the difference between the two?
Can't see the video yet, Tony.
Okay, right. Let me. Do this. How about now?
I've got show share. Hang on, I've got something up saying show sharing view.
Can you see that?
Ah, how's that? I can see it now. Dinner.
Okay, hands up if you cannot see the video.
I can just see dinner.
Okay, so we've got a few. You can see dinner.
Back on you.
Okay.
I won't touch anything.
Here we go.
That's it. Start screen sharing.
See
Yeah,
it
we're
now?
there. We're there. Lovely.
Cool. Okay. Picture A, picture B, picture A, picture B. See if you can spot the difference between the two. Hands up when you can. Ah, Liliana, well done. Brandon, cool. It's okay, keep looking. Can you spot the difference? Okay. I'm going to tell you what the difference is, and then when I do, you'll instantly be able to see it, and it'll be built into your worldview. Ready? It's the bar behind their heads. So it's quite a big thing that's changing. Moving up and down behind their heads. So why couldn't you see it? A bit weird. So I'm going to show you another one. Let's do other side. Okay, same again. Picture A, picture B, picture A, picture B. Hands up when you spot the difference. Okay, well done, Judy. And Lizzie. Okay, while you're looking, notice what you're doing with your eyes. Are you looking at the picture as a whole, or are you trying to scan around about the size of a thumbnail around the image, trying to see the difference? Yeah, if you could see this picture as a whole both times, you'd see the difference. Because you can only see a thumbnail size worth, you're scanning around the picture about a thumbnail size worth, trying to see the difference. Okay, ready? I'll tell you. It is the box on top of the boat. So the slightly larger boat in front of the boy, there's a blue box on the left-hand side of it. Hope you can see that now. Okay, let's try one more. Okay, here we go again. Picture A, picture B, picture A, picture B. Can you spot the difference? This one's a bit busier this time. Again, notice what you're doing with your eyes. You're scanning around a thumbnail size width because you can't see the picture as a whole. You can get a feel for the picture, but not see the details. Still nothing? Okay, let's see if we can narrow it down. Wow, well done, Brian. So, okay, let's cut the picture in half. And so right down the middle, where you see that white post coming in with the guy on top of it, picture. So let's go to the side from there to the other side where the traffic lights are. So from the middle to the side where the traffic lights are. Half the picture. Can anyone see the difference? It's hard, isn't it? It's hard. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell you what the difference is. And when I tell you, what your brain will be able to do then is to build it in to the world it sees in front of it. So until it does that, it will completely blind you to it. So when I tell you, it will build it into your worldview, and then it will allow your consciousness to see it. Okay, here we go. It is here on the right-hand side, the window of the back of the Mercedes-Benz. Goes light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. Okay, again, it's quite a big change size-wise of that image. But because you can't see that image as a whole, it kind of almost makes it impossible for you to see it. So how do we possibly survive as a human species when we kind of miss a lot of things? Well, we have ways of making this information work for us. So this is a famous picture called the Neca Cube. You should be able to see a cube there, 3D shape. What's actually there is just a series of circles with notches cut out of it. Your brain is interpreting the missing information and it's filling in the gaps. So it does that a lot. So any piece of information that it thinks should be there, it's not there, it will fill in for you. It will make you aware of it even though it's not there. And even if you look closely at the lines in between the dots, it may even just have a little glow around it so you can see the white lines, but it's not there. So one way it copes as a brain is it fills in information for you. Another thing it does is you should see that some of these are actually moving, or they look like they're moving. And yet when you look at the black dot in any of the ones that are moving, they stop. What's going on here is that your eyes flicker constantly. So the muscles in your eyes work differently to all the other muscles in your body. So usually to move a muscle, you think, and then a signal would go down to your muscle, and then it would activate your muscle, and you move. In your eyes, your muscles are on all the time. So all your muscles are constantly pulling, constantly on, and that creates a flicker. So to move your eyes to the left or to the right, you don't pull a muscle, the opposite muscle has to relax. So what that does is two things. So the flicker actually lets you take in just a little bit more of the thumbnail size piece of information of what you're looking at each time, which helps build that world picture of what's in front of you. It also stops your eye muscles, the rods and cones, from overloading with information. So it stops them fatiguing. And fatigue is interesting. So this is a video on muscle fatigue. So if you stare at the black dot in the middle of the video, those pink dots with a gap moving around, the pink dots suddenly start to disappear. And what you start seeing is just a green circle moving around. And when you stare at something like the cross, you're slowing down the flicker in your eyes. And so the muscles, the rods and cones that are seeing these pink dots become fatigued, saying, yep, it's a pink dot, it's a pink dot, it's a pink dot. Oh, I've given up, it's a pink dot, you know it's there. And so it gives up and you start to become blinded. So the flicker kind of helps with keeping that image fresh in your eyes, not overloaded. So we also take priority over things. So motion takes priority over color change. So what I'm going to show now is a color blindness in movement little snippet. So what you'll see is you'll see a series of dots, colored dots around the outside, and I want you to stare into the center. There should be a black dot in the middle. Stare at the black dot and you'll see all these color changes, and then the circle will start to change, and it will appear that the colors will have stopped changing, but they wouldn't have. So stare at the white dot Okay, so if you're staring at the white dot, it should have appeared that all the colors were flickering, changing colors, and then as soon as it started moving, all those changes stopped. I'll do it again for you. All the flickering and then staring at the white dot. As soon as it starts moving, movement takes priority over the color change, which is interesting. So, so what's going on with our eyes? Well, our eyes have kind of been adapted and evolved over a long process, and it gives us the mistaken idea that what goes into our eyes is actually what's processed in the brain, and it's not the case at all. So think about your rods and cones at the back of your eye. They don't actually take a photograph and fax it to your brain as what you're seeing. What it does, it has to go through a series of cells. It has to go through your bipolar cells, for example, and then the information gets given to your rods and cones. And then it sends electrical signals like numbers. So yes, I'm on, so 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 5, yeah, it's a big color, 2, 2. So all of these from all your rods and cones are coming up to your brain. And your brain has to make sense of these numbers somehow. All this information from your eyes, from your left and your right. So it does its best guess at trying to decode what it's actually seeing in front of it. And it does that based on what it sees around it, the feelings of the context, and also mostly about what the fitness of the object is and how important is it for you. So it builds a world that you imagine, that you perceive and you construct. Information is coming in, it then gets sent to your brain for decoding. So trying to make sense of something. So we perceive something, goes in, and then we construct that into our brain. So what I perceive and what I construct in my brain is different to anyone else's. So yours is slightly different to everyone else's too. Because we're the same species, and what's important to us, the fitness of something, tends to be pretty similar, so we will see similar things. But we're mistaken in thinking that what we actually see is what is in front of us. There's a theory called fitness beats truth theory. So we as a species think that we see the world as the way it is, pretty truthful. This is a table, this is a pen, this is paper, it's my computer. So we think that's the truth. But recent models actually on game theory have proven that any animal that has evolved to show truth over fitness will die pretty quickly. What we see is icons of fitness. So imagine it like your desktop, your computer desktop. Again, there's an interface theory of perception, which this is based on. So on your computer screen, you will see pop up a red envelope to signify you've got an email. Now, does that mean that the email you've just been sent is red and it's in the middle of that screen right now? No, of course not. It's an icon to show you the meaning and the fitness of what the information is. What's actually going on is kind of a whole series of voltage changes in your computer, the cooling, the coding, the movement in and out of RAM of information. Now, if you had to try and decode all of that information that's going on in your computer in order to see and read an email, you'd never get anything done. So what you do, what's presented onto the computer screen is icons that are useful. So what we see as a species is not the truth, of what's there, we see items as icons of fitness. I know it's a difficult concept to kind of get your head around. Okay, an example. Think of a great big pile of steaming turd. Okay, so for us as a species, that is pretty nasty. It won't smell very nice, and it certainly won't taste very nice. So it's not very nice. But according to a fly or a dung beetle, their perception of the steaming pile of dung is pretty tasty. Yeah, it's a pile of goodness right there. Let's go dig in. So what's going on? Is it that our perceptions are correct and the flies and beetles actually have a perception problem? Or are the dung beetles and flies' perceptions correct and we have an issue with our perception? Or is our perception based on the fitness of something? So the fitness of a big pile of dung to us are pretty negative. We don't need it. So therefore, it smells and tastes and appears to be something negative. But to a dung beetle, it appears very positive because for them, it requires, it represents a kind of a more positive fitness aspect. So another example would be the jewel beetle. So the jewel beetle in Australia, for example, has almost gone extinct simply because it just wasn't giving enough offspring. So the Australian scientists started looking into why the jewel beetle was dying out. And they realized that it was the Australian drinking habits of the outback man that was causing the destruction of this jewel beetle. Not by stepping on it, not by destroying its environment, but by drinking small stubbies, which are tiny little bottles of beer, and throwing them out. So to a male jewel beetle, a stubby beer looks very enticing and just like the texture, shape, and color of a female jewel beetle. So these male jewel beetles would be mounting these empty beer bottles of stubbies and going to town and actually not producing any offspring. So the perception of a jewel beetle is on fitness. And so its fitness levels are, if it's brown, if it's shiny, if it's big and it doesn't move, then that's the girl for me. For us, obviously we can see that, you know, it's kind of made a mistake. But that doesn't mean to say that our perceptions are any better, just that our fitness perceptions are that that's a beer, so that's useful for drinking, that's a beetle. So our perceptions are built on fitness rather than actual reality. What's interesting is when we go to sleep, the opposite happens. So when we go to sleep, we construct the world that we've lived in. And actually then we are the people in it who start to perceive this world. So when we're awake, we perceive and then we construct. And then when we're asleep, we construct this world and then we're in it, perceiving it. Okay, let that sink in for a second. So we're going through this cycle constantly of perceiving and constructing and perceiving, day and night, to try and hone in what it is of these fitness models that actually work, are useful for us. Okay, mind blown a little bit, I hope. Okay, let's move on. I've already gone over time and we've got loads to get. Okay, so I'm going to skip some bit. So, perception so far, some of the other things we've seen are just still images, or maybe just even flickering images. What happens when we start looking at pieces of information that are moving, that are kind of more like the real life that we're used to? So I'm going to show you a couple of perception tests, okay? And I want you to spot the difference. In fact, I'll show you 1. Worm perception test. Okay, so what I want you to do is kind of watch this short video and just kind of make a note of any changes or anything that happens in there, which is unusual.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Spy, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master's bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's skirt below stairs.
I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe. How would you know, madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
Cool. So, how observant were you? Did anybody spot any changes? Anything that was different? Okay, hopefully you would have seen maybe 1, 2, 3 changes maybe. There were 21 changes that happened during that video. Okay, I'm going to play the video again, but this time it's from a different angle so you can see all the things that are happening, changing.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Spy, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master's bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's skirt below stairs.
I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
Go. So, huge amounts of changes, 21 changes. So even a change of dead guy and murder weapon on the floor. And yet we didn't see it. It's hard to see because we don't really see the detail. We see the emotion and the feeling of a place and the context around it. So unless something kind of changed dramatically, you won't necessarily be able to see it. And this is more like real life. But what the brain does, it hides anything that kind of disagrees with itself. So it wants to create a seamless narrative of your life based on events and moments and causes and actions. The fact that they may not be a cause and effect, or they may not be there, or something may happen somewhere else in your field of vision or perception, it makes no difference. Your brain will just block it out in order to create this seamless narrative of what's going on. Make sense? Okay, so what have we learned so far? The amount of information we take in is much lower than we believe. The brain uses it to create a seamless narrative for your life, and it does this to guide behaviors that uses icons to represent fitness. The brain adjusts its perceptions based on what it thinks should be there, what was there in the past, and the overall feeling, and it does this through the language of emotion and behavior. So the icons you see, the world that gets built around you with these icons, use emotion to guide your behavior. Okay? So the language of emotion is what guides your behavior. So why? Okay, so I want you to do this kind of in your head. I want you to make a list of what a lion looks like. Okay, a lion. So think about what it looks like. So for me, it would be, okay, it has a nose, it has 2 eyes, 2 ears, mouth, sharp teeth, a mane, it has a body, it has 4 legs, and it has a tail. Sometimes it has a tufty bit on the end of the tail. Okay, so that to me is a lion. Cool. What can you see? A lion, right? Cool. So tell me, how many eyes can you see? How many ears can you see? How many noses? How many bodies? How many legs? How many tails? All of these things that are on your list of what a lion is, the vast majority of them are missing. And yet you know that's a lion. Why? Well, if you saw that coming around a corner when you were out, you wouldn't have to wait until you saw the tail. So, yeah, there's a head, body, yeah, oh, it looks like a lion, maybe. There's 4 legs, there's a body, and a tail. Now it's a lion. Now I can run, because you'd be dead. Yeah, your brain uses the information it takes in to make predictions. It's a prediction engine, constantly looking for ways to make this narrative of your life and to keep you safe of what's happening in the future. So it fills in. So, can you read this? Yeah, I think most people are actually reading it. So it makes no difference what's in the middle of a word. You're predicting what the next word will be based on perception of the first and last and what's roughly in the middle-ish. Yeah, it makes no difference what's actually in the middle. Your brain will predict what you think should be there, and it will kind of create that for you. So we create predictions to stay alive, and the quicker we can make these predictions, then the more likely we are to stay alive. So for those of you who know anything about neuro-linguistic programming, these help form schemas. So a schema is a behavior set. So it's a series of predictions and emotions and behaviors that will make you more likely to survive in an environment than others. Okay, so here's an example. Imagine you're out with your friends. It's Friday night. You're down at the pub, having fun. Imagine what emotions you might be feeling, what language you might be using, what reactions to things you might be using. Okay, sounds pretty good. Yeah, I can kind of see that. Now imagine you're going around to a friend's nan's house for Sunday afternoon tea. Okay, so imagine the emotional state you'll be in, imagine the language you'll be using, and imagine what would be happening with your behavior. Now I'm hoping that those two things will be different. Your Friday night out with the girls or boys and your Sunday afternoon tea will be different behaviors, but you're the same person. So what's happening is different behavior sets are clicking into place depending on your environment. So now let's imagine you've been invited to visit the Queen. Okay, and if you've not visited the Queen before, your brain will be frantically trying to find the nearest schema or behavior set it has that it thinks will fit in to your environment, keeping you alive and safe and happy and not being laughed at or beheaded in front of the Queen. So it will probably turn up with something like visiting your nan, a very posh nan, and it will kind of make you behave and act and think of that rather than the Friday night with the girls. So while you're in that new environment, you'll be behaving in that new behavior set, and your prefrontal cortex will be working overtime to work out all the differences, all the nuances. Okay, so I have to curtsy there. I have to call her mom. Okay, I can not step on the corgis. All these little things that make a difference, your prefrontal cortex will be building. And so by the time you leave, you'll have a new behavior set, visit the Queen behavior, which you can use next time. And you'll also have a massive headache because your prefrontal cortex uses so much energy in order to look at those differences. But the next time you go, the behavior set will slip in much more easier, and you won't have to use your prefrontal cortex so much. Okay? So that's important for us too, as people.
Can I just interrupt, Tony? I just let you know it's 5 to 9.
Okay, I told you.
Amazing, but I just thought I'd let you know.
Okay, well, please feel free if you have to shoot off, that's fine. Okay, we'll keep going. So on a piece of paper, if you have one, piece of paper and a pen, I'm going to put up a series of words, and I want you just to draw or to think of an image that comes to mind when you see these words. Okay? First one is boat. So if you can, you've got paper there, that would be really good. Draw a picture of what comes to mind when you see that word. Just a quick sketch. The next one is clock. Cool. The next one is damage. Next one is friend. And the last one is good. Okay, cool. Hopefully, those who have managed with the pen and paper have some images. Here's mine. So here's my boat. I know it's not very good. Compare it to what you had to think of. Here's my clock. Here's my damage. It's a cup falling over, the handle broken. Here's my friends. It's a stick figure of two people arms around each other. And good is a thumbs up. Okay, so how many had something similar? Yeah? Something similar. Cool. So that's because we're of the same species, and so the information, the image that comes into my head kind of gets transferred out into an image into your head, and it's roughly the same. Where it starts to break down is kind of towards damage, friend, and good. So how many had something different with damage instead of a glass cup? Yeah, we have 1, 2, 3, yeah, different damages. Who had a different goods? So a thumbs up. Yeah, different goods. Cool, yeah. So these are slight differences, slight nuances of images that are created in your head that is from created in mine. And these differences are more exacerbated if the age of a person saying it is different, or the experience of somebody is different. So if I was to talk to you about clock, boats, and damage, if you're the same, roughly the same age as me, and with roughly the same experience, you know, UK citizen, you know, 21 years old. Yeah, stop laughing, is it? Then our images from my head, when I say it, will be transferred to you, and you'll get similar images. If that experience or age is different, then you'll get slightly different images created in your head. And this is where misunderstandings occur, because you could be saying one thing to somebody, and in their head, they're picturing something completely different. So those are interesting. What's also interesting, especially when you're drawing a clock, is that most teenagers, when they draw a clock, put 3 o'clock. Who put 3 o'clock? Yeah. Most kids or parents put 3 o'clock because that's the time when school comes out. You tend to put a time that's important to you when you're doing a clock. Cool. So words not only form pictures that are different, but they can actually control your behavior differently. So we're going to do this test. I want you to clasp your hands together, and I want you to put your index fingers out about a centimetre gap in between them. Okay, a centimetre gap. I want you to look at the gap between your fingers and say the word close in your head. So look at the gap, say the word close, close, as loud as you can. Okay, what's happening to your fingers? Are they closing? Close. Okay, what you'll find is that they will start to close. And for some people, they will close much more rapidly than others. So for me, they tend to close no matter if I put them apart. So they close pretty quickly for me. But for others, they will not close as quickly. But what you can do, so what's happening there is your brain is getting ready for your muscles to take action. And so your premotor cortex is sending signals to your muscles, getting them ready to close. Okay, he's going to want to close his fingers in a second, so I'm going to get them ready. So they're warming the muscles up. So the ideomotor response is my muscles are kind of primed, and so they'll slowly start to inch towards each other, making the movement that I'm thinking of. So when I'm thinking of words, it's affecting the muscles and therefore affecting my behavior. If your fingers didn't go together very well, get somebody, next time you remember, to actually pretend to tie a piece of string around your fingers and then loop them around. The kids used to do it in school a lot. So if you put it like, pretend to do a little string and then loop them around your fingers. And then your fingers will start to close. You'll just need a different type of narrative to control that behavior. So, how else can this information be useful? So, language and perception. So, language for me is crucial in perception, and it can help shape our emotional response and our perceptions to what's going on, especially our internal state. So I'm going to go through some language techniques which you can use to start framing perception. So first one is on anchoring. Okay, so here's a question for you. Is the population of Bristol more or less than 3 million? Okay, I just want you to think about that. And come up with an answer, more or less. Is Bristol population more or less than 3 million? Okay, got an answer, more or less? Cool. If it's less, what number would you assign? If it's more, what number would you assign? Okay, just think about that. Just think about a number. If it's more than 3 million, less than 3 million. It's tough, I know, it's a big number. So, hopefully you've got a number now. The actual answer is 686,000. So how many people, put your hands up, had a number which is much higher than that? Yeah, lots of people had a number that's much higher than 686,000. Why? Well, I anchored the question with a number. So I anchored your thoughts of the population of Bristol to 3 million. So whether you thought it was more or less, your number would be based around the anchor that I set, which is 3 million. The fact that it's kind of much lower changes your perception. So anchoring is great for priming people into a certain way or a certain understanding of thinking. Framing is also useful. So here's a question for you. You have a serious medical condition, requires an experimental drug. Okay, so the doctor will put it to you two ways. The first way, he says, that there's a 10% death rate in the first month for people on this trial. Will you take the trial? Doesn't sound very good. Another doctor says that there's a 1 month survival rate of 90%. Which one are you more likely to choose? Probably the survival rate of 90%. even though they both equate to the same. The same would be true of this question. Would you accept a gamble that offers 10% chance of winning £95 or 90% chance of losing £5? Or would you pay £5 to take part in a lottery that offers 10% chance to win £100 or 90% chance of winning nothing? Now, most people would say the first one. Would you take the gamble because losses evoke a stronger emotion than cost. So if you were to frame suggestions or responses that were based on losing something, they evoke a stronger emotion than if you framed them that there was a cost of something. Okay? So status quo. Yeah, not these guys. So availability bias. So if something appears rare, that it's considered more desirable. And we know this from all of our perceptions on marketing techniques. A status quo bias. If something appears to have been used or done before, then you're more likely to continue to do it. So if you do something once and you've survived, you are more likely to do it in the future. Yep, and we know this from our own behavior. Yeah, if we sit in the canteen at our work, we normally sit in the same seat. Yeah, we like to go use the same mug. We like to use and do the same things. But also, if others use or do something, you're more likely to do it as well. So that's the social influence. So that's why restaurants put people in window seats first, rather than sticking them in the back. That's why when you go to a supermarket and you've got an aisle full of goods that are pretty much the same, you would choose the one that is mostly empty, because more people would have chosen that. Oh, that one must be good. Lots of people are buying that. So that's our social influence and bias. So how we think in shortcuts to save processing time. We use heuristics and rules of thumb, and we use icons. So that cup in front of me isn't really there. It isn't really a cup. It's just showing me an icon of what its fitness is. We kind of get lost sometimes in some of the higher numbers. So, and we're pretty bad. So probability of getting 2 heads on 2 flip coins. Pretty simple question. 2 flip coins, probability. We're actually really bad at it, 25%. So I'm going to flick through these games. So you have 2 processes. You have the thinking fast and the thinking slow. So looking at this image, yeah, you pretty much know instantly what this guy is thinking and feeling and how your reaction to that is. So that's a fast emotional thought. So 17 times 24, okay. This is an example of a slow emotion, slow process thought. Not much emotional going in there, but more cognitive work needing to be done. So you have 2 systems at work, at play all the time. You have your fast emotional response and you have your slow cognitive responses. So how do we overcome the emotional response and start using our system 2 more? Well, there are several things we can do. First thing is accept the emotion, but challenge the thought. So understanding, accepting emotional reactions, but then using that slower thought to actually contemplate and temper your behavioral action. Cultivate skepticism, not cynicism. So this happens a lot when our emotional response is obviously much quicker than our thought. So when I'm working with some students in school, sometimes they will have an emotional response. So they will go to a lesson, maths lesson, say, and it's been bad maths lessons for the last month. Awful, getting thrown out all the time. And so obviously, as we know, the brain will make a prediction based on past experiences that my next math lessons will be bad too, and I'm likely to be thrown out. Okay, so it has this prediction before I even get to the classroom. So I'm sitting down at my desk, I'm doing my work, and actually things are going okay. So the brain says, well, hang on a minute, I made a prediction that this is going to be a bad lesson. And this is actually turning out to be a pretty good lesson. So it sets up a gap, something called a cognitive dissonance. So from prediction to actually what's going on. So it doesn't like that, so it causes it pain. So it tries to close that gap. So it will start sending things up from your anterior cingulate cortex to your perception awareness. Oh, that kid over there is annoying me. Oh, why is he flicking that rubber? Is he looking at me? Is he annoying me? And your behavior responses will be closed to bridge the gap in order then for you to get kicked out of that lesson and for your brain to think, oh, my prediction is correct. Thank God for that. Makes no difference that, you know, the education for that lesson is bad. So what I try and do for students is to actually tell them, okay, if you're actually in a lesson and you'll start having these thoughts, you know, that person's annoying me, or that teacher's looking at me, or something's happening to cause you to start disruptive as you were in the past, actually recognize that and take a step back. So sit back and think, okay, is that actually annoying me, or is that my brain trying to close my gap in order to fulfill a prediction? And 9 times out of 10, when you actually sit back and you put your slower thinking on, it will start to challenge your behavior thinking. And you can actually make calmer, informed decisions. It's hard to do, especially when in an emotional state, but what you got to do is learn to catch those triggers much earlier. So almost finished. So you can use perceptual positions. So when we discuss and talk about things, we often do it in the first person, you know, as if we're there. And when you talk to somebody, especially in a therapeutic environment, they will give their opinion based on their first person experience of what's happened. So using perceptual positions can actually alter their understanding of an interaction. So by getting them to actually look at, okay, well, what was that other person? I want you to take the role of that other person. What were they seeing in you, and what were they feeling and doing? And that's quite powerful. And then when you step back and become an observer of the whole scene, so you can see themselves and the other person, and you're a bystander, an observer, you're removing themselves from that emotional state, and you'll be able to see with much clearer understanding what that interaction is. So when you put them back into that first person position, they have a greater understanding of all the perceptual positions of what's going on. It's very powerful. So reframing. So we talked about framing, and you can also use reframing. The language is a great tool for reframing. Another example from school using reframing, and reframing and feedback, in fact, is if somebody comes to you in a heightened emotional state, it will all be superlatives. It will all be, that's the worst thing ever. I hate that. That is, you know, never doing that again. So when you're actually trying to work with somebody in a heightened state like that, if you try to challenge their thinking, then you will become part of the problem as well. So if you somewhere say, oh, it wasn't that bad, you know, you're just, you know, just you was having a bad day, and they will think, what the hell do you know? Well, you weren't there. But how you can start to change their perceptual positions by reframing and feeding back. So if a student would come and would say, oh, I hate that teacher, that's the worst lesson ever. And if you feed back, but by using lower emotive language, oh, so you don't like that teacher at the moment. What's going on? So they came in with, I hate that teacher. You're feeding back, agreeing with them, but you're using language like you don't like them at the moment. And then they'll say, yeah, it's kind of terrible, and they go off on that. But when you feed back, you bring that emotive language down again. So what that starts to do, it starts to feed back into their brains that, yes, I'm not feeling very good, but actually it's not hate, it's just not like. And then it's not like, it's just not getting on with. And then when you start adding in phrases like at the moment, it puts into the perception that this is a temporary measure. So from I hate that teacher to I don't like them at the moment gets accepted back into the brain as feedback of what's actually happening. And that feedback loop starts to bring them down much quicker. So that's very useful. Okay, last thing is on cause and effect. So we have a notion as humans of having cause and effect on a lot of things, when really what we have effect over is very limited. And here is a short video, which I won't show, but I will point you towards. This is done by Darren Brown. And I did some work with Darren on one of his TV shows on hypnosis. Not this one, but this clip is on cause and effect. And so these people had to score 100 points in order to be released and win money. So there were loads of things going on in there. There were kind of games, there were dots and colors and things. And they had to score 100 points. The actual points were being controlled by a goldfish in another room swimming across the middle of their goldfish tank. So it had nothing to do with them at all. But because they were doing things and they were scoring points, they were creating a cause and effect. Do you want me to play it? It's about 1 minute long. Okay. Let's see if it works. Cool. So they kind of come up with an idea that their cause had an effect, where most of the time we don't. The cause and effect are quite random, and that's quite a refreshing thing to keep in your head sometimes. Okay.
Thanks very much, Tony.
Go. So I'll try and, if you have any questions or if you put any questions on here, which I didn't manage to see, I'll try and put some of the answers on Facebook or on the website, so you can see them.
Yeah, so thanks ever so much everyone for joining us. Won't keep you much longer. That was a fantastic presentation. Thank you ever so much, Tony. I've learnt loads. Yeah, mind blowing. Thank you very much.